Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the FanScription podcast. I'm Walter Bernasiak here with the writer of this month's episode,
Rob.
Just Rob, like Madonna.
Like Tarsum.
I like it. This month, well, actually last month's episode, we tried to keep it kind of a Halloween theme, and since we know that you guys like Disney so much, we went with the Haunted Mansion. And this one was just, what if we fix the Haunted Mansion movie? Because there are so many individual problems with this that we decided.
There's a lot.
Yeah, so we decided to just do a complete overhaul. You just did everything over. Starting with recasted it, you did everything from the bottom up. You kept a couple elements, I guess, some of the character names and things like that. But for the most part, you really built this from the bottom and all the way to the top of the mansion, if you know what I mean.
It was a long one.
Yeah.
I had 2 drafts that kept Eddie Murphy in it. And I, for the life of me, just couldn't make it work, which is why I think maybe he was really miscast in that movie. And I went with Will Smith, and it just flowed a lot easier because I'm just like, okay, that would be more in his wheelhouse. But and I get because some people were just like, oh, Will Smith, I'm so sick of Will Smith. This would have been like Will Smith back in the days when he was like, oh, Will Smith, and not Will Smith.
This is early 2000s.
This would be early 2000s Will Smith. I don't know what happened to Will Smith lately, but fire his agent maybe.
I don't know. Did you see Gemini Man?
No, I heard it was pretty terrible.
Everyone hates it. I actually kind of liked it. There's a lot wrong with it, and the acting isn't great, but the concept overall I thought was okay.
I sat through Aladdin. Which
when he's being himself,
just being himself, he's fine.
Yeah,
and then,
he's trying to be Robin
After
Williams,
Earth
not gonna
was
work.
terrible.
I didn't even see that.
It's oh my god, it's so bad. So I don't know what happened to Will Smith, but back in the day, I loved Will Smith. I still think he's very charismatic. He just needs to be in better movies.
I agree. Putting him in here was a pretty good idea. I think he would have fit pretty well into this kind of PG sort of era you're trying to go with in this.
Say light PG-13.
Yeah, it fits.
I didn't want to write a hard R movie.
Yeah,
because I know Guillermo del Toro was attached to a Haunted Mansion idea, and I could have just done that, but I feel like Disney would never let that movie get made, and really haven't. So
it's true. There's been a lot of rumors about the new Haunted Mansion movie that's never happened. So
yeah, so I mean, I don't know. When I was writing it, I was just I mean, it's still cheesy and tropey, but I'm just like, that's the kind of movie Disney would have allowed to fly in the early 2000s. So I was just kind of going for that vibe of it's cheesy and tropey, but it's it's fun. It's got some legit spooks and scares in it. It's a little lighter than Pirates of the Caribbean.
Sure. Which makes sense. Before we get into any of your specific changes, do you remember seeing this for the first time at all? Do you remember going to the theater? Did you see it in theaters?
Oh God, I didn't see it in the big screen. Are you kidding me?
I don't know.
No,
Some people, I think I did. I don't remember.
No, the reviews were abysmal.
Right.
To the point that I'm just like, I think I trust the reviews on this because it doesn't look good. We had to see it when we reviewed it for the Nostalgia Critic. And I'm
never heard of that show.
Yeah, it's the host is a hack, but it doesn't. It's actually worse than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
I just was really unimpressed. I thought it was the only thing I did like is there were some practical effects, which I thought was cool.
Because Rick Baker did some of the masks and stuff.
But it was so goofy, bright, and colorful in a way that the Haunted Mansion. So the Haunted Mansion's a weird ride because if you follow the history of it, there were so many people working on it.
Yeah.
That one team wanted it really dark and scary, one team wanted it really goofy. So it's a combination of both, and this to me was just really goofy, without any darkness or any legit scares to it.
Right.
The plot didn't make a lot of sense. Eddie Murphy was miscast, so I really didn't like it. Doug didn't like it either.
I don't know too many people who like this one. We always get defenders of whatever movie we're covering. Like we did Spider-Man 3.
There was one in the comments that went on one long rant about how dare you, and to say that the movie's objectively terrible because Rotten Tomatoes said it. You're an arrogant SOB, and I'll never watch you or your brother again. I'm like, all right, we'll have fun. I don't know what.
If Haunted Mansion's the straw that breaks the camel's back, man, that's pretty ridiculous.
I'm like, I mean, it's hyperbole to say it's a universally accepted fact.
Sure.
Every movie's going to have its defender, but yeah, I think when you're sitting at like a 30% audience score and 15% critic score, that's pretty bad. We're not talking about a divisive movie where it's just like, oh, well, the critics really liked it, but the audience hated it, or vice versa.
Right,
I'm like, it's like, it was pretty evenly matched.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
and this was obviously before the Rotten Tomatoes era sort of kicked off. This was 2003, so I mean, I guess you could take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I mean, there's still a lot of reviews on there that are counted, so
I'd have to check its IMDb score, but I don't think it's much better.
Right.
And I don't put everything in those scores because you'll get a lot of trolls in on movies and stuff. But I'm just like, this was not a movie that had a controversy or something where people would really upvote or downvote based on. I'm like, I tend to believe that's about an honest summary.
That makes sense. You know, I didn't like it the first time I saw it, and then I saw the movie before I read the ride, so I saw the actual ride at Disneyland, or read through it way after seeing this, and it's such a great ride. I know it's weird because of the background with it and stuff.
Oh yeah, the ride's amazing.
Yeah, the ride's so well done.
They really did both scary and goofy together because it's dark, gothic, and atmospheric when it needs to be, and then you've got those moments where there's a sense of humor. The guy coming out of the coffin, the hitchhiking ghost.
The seeing
it's
busts.
got many great moments.
Right, for sure. There's a good mix of tones in there, but it is legit kind of spooky. I mean, when you're younger and stuff, you see the guy hanging above you at the beginning.
The guy hanging. There's I think the floating dancers is one of the best effects.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a pure ghost story thing. Like, there's nothing goofy about it. It's actually really spooky, where it's like, wow, this is like a really spooky part of the ride where you just see this unfolding. Like, so it's a great ride, and it captured both of those elements, I think, really well. The movie did not.
The movie just tried to be a kid's movie. It's like an unsuccessful Goosebumps reboot. It feels like the Jack Black movies that we got. That some people kind of like that first one because
that movie was more self-aware.
No, for sure.
I don't even like. I'm not a giant fan of that movie, the Goosebumps movie, but like it's way more successful. I'm like, yeah, if I were a kid, like I would be way more into this. I don't know if I were a kid if I would even like the Haunted Mansion movie.
No, when I was a kid,
I grew up in the '80s. I had real scary movies to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For kids, so
yeah, and that makes more sense. But the ride has so much history and there's so much sort of lore behind it. You would think that this would be one that they would really dig into that aspect of it and really make something at least like deep on a story level. And this was just the most surface level like haunted house movie. It was like an after school special almost at some points. It felt like
the only thing I liked in it was Terrence Stamp.
Right.
So
Neil.
Yeah, Neil before Zod. But apart from him, I'm just like, yeah, there really wasn't anything.
Right. Not much to latch on to. I think the parts that, or at least the one part that, at least, that's pretty cool, was kind of the Last Crusade, dead bodies coming to life sort of.
Yeah, I mean, and those
Baker
were practical effects. So
right.
For a second there, I'm like, oh, maybe this is the movie we could have gotten.
Right.
Like actual scares.
But we didn't. So, since Pirates of the Caribbean came out that same year, which is a big point you make in the video, you would think that this would be something that they really spend a lot of time on making something grand, and they didn't do that. So
I have a theory about that.
What's your theory? I want to hear this.
I've got two
We're
theories.
all about theories on this show.
Maybe they're intersecting theories, like they both happen. One is they blew all their money on Pirates of the Caribbean, so it's just like, well, we can't blow all our money on
possible.
The second is this was at a point where, particularly with these live action films, which had mostly been known for being stupid. I think Pirates is the first one that really gained an audience. They're like, oh, it's actually legit really good.
Right.
Nobody says that about the Country Bears unironically.
Bears! What is Christopher Walken's line?
It ain't over. Bears! Oh no. Country Bear Hall fell down.
That's awesome.
So I think Disney was just trying to throw a whole bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. So you had two options. One was this Pirates of the Caribbean one where it's like, yeah, we'll do a comedy, but let's make it dark and take it seriously. It's like, this is going to be legit spooky and a lot of money put into it. And the other one was like, let's make some goofy kids thing and just see whatever. Because like they both were licensed Disney properties and they both were rides. It's like, let's just see what happens. And, obviously Pirates is the one that worked.
Right.
And Disney won't even look at Haunted Mansion again.
I know. That's what sucks is because there's so much they could do. I mean, I really think a PG-13 Haunted Mansion movie, especially with a Guillermo del Toro or someone like a more visionary
well,
type of director.
What kills me is they've got way more potential than they ever did with Pirates.
Right.
I mean,
I agree
let's
with
be
that.
honest, those Pirates movies fizzled out pretty quick. The
They
second one
tried
I
to
thought
get
was
too
entertaining.
grandiose.
Yeah,
Right.
and then the third one wasn't good, and they haven't been really great since the first one.
I agree.
But this you have the Haunted Mansion ride. I'm like, there's way more potential of what you can do there versus the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
100%.
And they just flushed it down the toilet.
Right. Well, let's get into some of your changes here. The biggest thing I think, and a lot of people seem to enjoy from reading the comments and stuff, was that you based this not on the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World or Disneyland, but on Phantom Manor in Disney World Paris or Disneyland Paris.
Euro Disney.
Euro Disney.
I don't know what they call it anymore.
Right.
But.
Yeah, but everyone knows that ride. If you're a big Disney fan, you
Le
kinda know.
Disneyland.
Right. It's a take off the Haunted Mansion, but it's tied into Big Thunder Mountain, and you kind of, like you pointed out, you kind of get 2 Disney ride movies in one.
Yeah.
It's a great idea to do that.
I only found out about it from a number of videos from like Offhand Disney, Defunctland that had done some stuff on it. I was like watching them, I think last year or the year before, and I'm like, this ride's amazing. How come we did, and there was a lot of the Imagineers who had ideas, I think, for Disneyland and Disney World didn't get to do them, like went off to Euro Disney, and they're like, well, now we can build this from the ground up because the Disney World one, it's different looking on the outside, but it's a clone. Essentially, it's mostly kind of a clone,
Right.
Same idea, but they're like, well, we can build this from the ground up. We don't have to be beholden to Disneyland. So these genius Imagineers just designed this whole story and ride and made it more for the French market, which knew about Phantom of the Opera. So it was tailored more towards that, and I think overall it's a better story. There are things about the original Haunted Mansion I like, the guy hanging and which they kind of kept that actually in Phantom Manor, but in the idea that we collected all the ghosts and they're living here, like it's cute, but I'm like, overall the story is way more interesting in the French version.
Yeah, they do a lot in the French version where it's darker. I mean, there just seems to be more thought put into the actual story instead of just the atmosphere.
I love it. At the end of the ride, like there's like the corpse of the bride, like a skeleton, like pointing to the exit, and it's like real creepy, and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah. They just reopened it this year. They were remodeling it for about a year and a half, I think.
I hope it's still good.
From what I hear, it is.
That's good.
I watched a couple ride-through videos, and it still looked pretty good. They have actors on the outside now playing the bride and the Phantom.
I heard that. I was looking for images, and we found some. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great idea to sort of just sprinkle that on the outside and the exterior. It looks with the lighting. It looks so cool on the outside.
Well, I think the other thing about it was, part of the problem with the movie was that it both didn't want to use the lore, but also just became a series of just like, hey, we had that reference, check it out. And I'm just like, if you get the other ride, you can think outside of the box more and have a different story, and you don't just have to feel like, we're just going to have this reference and this. And like a few are okay, because I threw some in there myself, but it felt like when I was watching the Haunted Mansion, it was just note for note, reference to the ride itself, as if that's all you needed without a good story.
Wallace Shawn saying, well, there's always my way, and it just was kind of weird.
I put that in there too, but I'm like, well,
no, but how he said it, it was kind of strange. It was just like, what are you talking about? In Pirates of the Caribbean, there are references to the ride, obviously, but I mean, they really spent a lot of time on that story and building those individual characters that are independent from the ride.
The references were like seasoning. They were like a little bit of salt and pepper just to bring out a little more. Like
we get the dogs and the key thing. That was cool.
I felt thinking outside of the box was like probably a better way to go about it. And it gives you more stuff to do. You get Big Thunder Mountain attached.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Horror movie tropes, like the Indian, like the Native American like backstory, and like all these things like that goes back like Poltergeist, and like these are like classic horror tropes. So.
Right. Were you always thinking, since you adapted Phantom Manor and it is tied into Big Thunder Mountain, you did put some good emphasis on it in the FanScription. So was that something you consciously tried to do, or is that just kind of a part of the Phantom Manor story?
It was a part of the Phantom Manor story, and I'm like, well, if you have it there, why not use it? Because you could have a great sequence where you're riding an abandoned mine train. Like that's everybody's favorite part of Temple of Doom.
Yes, of course.
Even people who hate Temple of Doom love that scene. So you could do stuff like that. You've got like all of these other like elements that kind of interconnect, where you've got like miners who may have been killed. You got the missing town. Like, everything about that backstory, I'm like, this is super cool and creepy. Like, this ghost town that got, like, swallowed up. And, like, when I was watching the ride footage, I'm like, oh, that'd be amazing if they discovered this ghost town down below and there's, like, skeletons everywhere. And so it just made a lot of sense. And it's another way, like, the thing about the Haunted Mansion, like, the Disneyland one, it's very Southern Bayou, which works. I think it really works. But there's something I'm like, I don't see the American West enough sometimes with like Haunted Mansion type stuff or ghost story type stuff in American stories. Like, the only one I can think of at the top of my head is like The Shining.
Sure.
But that's like mountainous West. I'm like, it'd be cool just set something in the Southwest. I'm like, oh, like a literal ghost town. Like, might be something like cool, like different that we haven't seen as much before. So
right. This fanscription is unique in the fact, like I said earlier, that you kind of built the story or rebuilt the story from the ground up with just a couple elements left over from the movie. And one of the big aspects of that was recasting. We talked about Will Smith, but I mean, you brought in a bunch of other actors to fill these different roles. Do you want to talk about your choices there, like for the Phantom and for the caretaker and everything?
I was just trying to think of. I was just like, who was around in the early 2000s?
You've been very practical about this. You're like, oh, Christopher Lee and all these guys would be great, but they'd be busy. So I'm going to pick someone who's not as busy.
I mean, there's two ways we can go about this, which is like we can either just do our ultimate fantasy movie.
Yeah.
What it would be. And for some reason, I was just stuck in this mindset. I was like, well, Disney early 2000s, what would they be able to get? So, yeah, I mean, John Ratzenberger worked with Pixar. So I was like, well, he seems obvious as this like shady home inspector characters in on it. I'm like, Michael Keaton, would have done almost anything back then because he was post Jack Frost.
My favorite Christmas movie, Rob. What are you talking about?
The Phantom, I didn't know really because I'm like, well, Vincent Price is who you would want, but I'm like, well, he had long been dead. So I was just thinking like, who would have a good laugh and a good voice? And I was just thinking Jeremy Irons. I was like,
because you just think of Dungeons and Dragons, so it's just
I honestly thought of that first. Where I'm like, God, he was so over the top. But if you reined it in a little, like he could be great as like this robber baron type, like in the Old West, like crazed individual. Like So and then the rest, like Tim Blake Nelson was the one that I first like. I saw a picture. I'm like, okay, there has to be a caretaker. I'm like, I'm not going to do the whole staff because that makes it less creepy.
Right.
I like the fact that like it would be like one person there, so you don't have a whole staff to deal with whether they're ghosts or not. But I was like, I saw a picture of the caretaker. I'm like, well, this guy is like kind of a weird face and like kind of more of a Britishy look, like particularly with like the lantern and stuff. But I'm like, I'm like, if we're updating this Old West, like who would I? Immediately was thinking of like Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and I'm like, Tim Blake Nelson. Like
a lot of references.
He has that weird voice too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he would just fit in with that world.
He just came out with a movie where he's like a singing cowboy or something. I can't.
The Coen Brothers film. I saw him in that too. He was really good in that.
There's no shortage of him in like that kind of attire.
Yeah. So and then the bride and the.
Like you just randomly were like, let's redo Pearl Harbor real quick and bring in Josh Hartnett and Kate Beckinsale.
I had like no idea. I'm like those two just popped in my head because I was thinking of early 2000s films. So I'm like,
made sense.
I don't know. Like, and then I didn't even have like that was the thing. I didn't have any real problem with the kids, or I think it was a British woman.
Yeah,
who played the mother, but
she
I'm just
talks
like,
in the British accent at the end of the movie, and like,
does.
This is what she really sounds like.
But I'm like, I didn't have a real big problem with them. They were just sort of, so I didn't even have anybody to replace them. I'm like, you could just kind of go with anybody,
right?
So, but I think Will Smith was the biggest one where I'm like, if we make him this kind of con artist character, because that was a weird thing about the movie. The movie like starts off, and I remember watching it thinking, I'm like, he's a perfectly fine dad. I don't get what the problem is. Like, he works too much.
Right.
That's his only thing. But I'm like, he's trying to teach his kids how not to be afraid in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm like, all of the elements are here, so there's not really a character arc apart from like, I guess I shouldn't work too much. Like, that was it. So I'm like, let's just make this guy like more of a slime ball.
And not having him be a part of that family, I think, was a good idea to sort of give him that redemption arc.
Give him a redemption arc and basically start off from a point where, because like I feel like they didn't go anywhere. They went from point A to point B in the Haunted Mansion. I'm like, well, he was a pretty decent dad. He just worked too hard, and the only thing that's different is, well, I guess he's learned not to work as hard. It wasn't much to, but so the weirdest thing though is somebody pointed this out. A number of people pointed this out. Is that he gets into the trouble in the same way that Will Smith's character in Shark Tale did.
Yeah, I saw those comments.
Here's the thing.
Watching the horse race or something?
I swear to Christ, I have never seen Shark Tale.
I haven't either.
But I just laughed. I'm like, well, I mean, I was trying to think of a really tropey way to get him, like, you know, it's like a generic sort of like, he owes money to like hoodlums or so. So I'm like, but I just laughed because I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I really have never seen that movie. And I don't think it's a great plot point either. I was just trying to think of something cheesy in Disney that they could do. So it's like, who knew? Like, but that made me laugh. I'm like,
strong
shit.
parallel.
I looked up the plot afterwards. I'm like, really? I looked up the plot to Shark Tale. Like, went to Wikipedia. I'm like, holy shit!
Exact same.
I had no idea.
It's funny how that came up.
Doug had to review that for DreamWorks.
Yeah.
I never saw it though.
Okay.
Because the Disney Sembers and the DreamWorks stuff, it's like I've only seen about half of those.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of those on his own. So
right.
I never saw it. He's like, do you want to see Shark Tale? I'm like, I'm good. But apparently me and Shark Tale, we think alike.
Right? You guys are kindred spirits, I guess. Or at least in terms of the Will Smith characterization. So, I mean, we've gone over most of like the major changes in here. I mean, I really like the ghost train that you have show up at the end. That felt really visceral, and I like the thing.
I was trying to think, how do most of these like kids' horror stories end? It's like, well, you always have to have the villain getting dragged to hell or something.
Right, and they do in this one. The original version, he's literally like dragged to hell by like a demon or something, like into fire. So I was like,
so I wanted something similar, but I'm like, let's do something that matches the story a little more. So
yeah, that was pretty cool. A lot of the artwork, Anna, we always thank for providing the artwork.
She's amazing.
Us. Yeah, does great stuff. My favorite, I think, is the headless Will Smith.
Oh.
or just the head of Will Smith, I should say. The opposite.
We were trying to get Malcolm to read that. We were joking. He should just be like, trick or treat, motherfucker!
Yeah, I love the because it's basically the same line from Men in Black when they turn the car on.
With the car, yeah.
Good stuff. The Will Smith screech, I guess we could say. You did involve the Hatbox Ghost, which is a fan favorite. It was just re-added back to the ride like 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I heard they took the Hatbox Ghost out for a while. I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah, well,
I love the Hatbox Ghost.
From the things that I've read, he was only at the very beginning, like the first year or something, and then they took him out. But he was still on all the merchandise and everything. So he was involved with the ride, but not actually in the ride until just a few years ago.
No, I figured like a way to just bring him in would be like just do it organically, where he's like one of the ghosts showing up. So it's hinted that he was supposed to be at like the wedding party. Yeah, and was late back in the day, and now it's like, you know, he keeps coming back.
Right, I like that, and it's kind of about, you know, the things that make you sort of things that are spooky in movies and things, and you know, to a lesser degree in this rewrite since it's a Disney movie, but it's about the things that you're not sure about, that you're not, you know, you don't see. So I thought that was a good thing to put in there and just kind of freak people out a little bit.
And then the hitchhiker ghosts were, I'll be completely honest, a last minute addition. I had already the full script written, and then that was just like they're gonna kill me if I don't have them in there somewhere, because like they're another big hit. So I did it as a post credits scene.
Right. Did you ever give any thought to a current day retelling of the Haunted Mansion movie? Did you ever think about what you would do in that story? Would you make it more intense? Like, any ideas for that?
Man, if I were to do it nowadays,
like a director or a star or like a tone you would go with?
I think we were on the right track with Guillermo del Toro. I
was
depressed
agree with
that he did my problem with it is I would want to make it like a very hard PG-13 or maybe a soft R, and try to tell a kind of more adult story with it. But that's just where my mind goes with things. Mm-hmm. I don't know what they would. See, the problem is if you tried to do it now, Disney just isn't even into this sort of thing anymore. The Pirates movies are fizzling. Everything is based on these stupid remakes,
Right.
or reboots or whatever. So I'm like, I don't even know what it would look like, because with Marvel and Star Wars in their pocket, like, they don't need this. I think that's why it didn't work with Guillermo del Toro. They just, in the end, they're just like, we have our vision. Del Toro disagreed, and they're like, all right, we don't need it. We're sitting on money.
Right.
Like, what do we got? Marvel, we got Star Wars, we got all of this. Like, what do we need? You.
Right. I wonder what their vision of it was. Like, what was their tipping point with Guillermo del Toro's vision of this?
Oh, I'm sure he wanted to make it really creepy. And I'm sure they held
Which it
back.
should be.
I agree.
I mean, like, Pirates of the Caribbean has some creepy moments with the skeletons walking underwater. At least visually interesting, kind of like spooky imagery, you know?
I don't get what it is. I feel like there's some disconnect where they felt okay doing it with Pirates and they don't with the Haunted Mansion, which seems insane.
There is a big ghost story in Pirates of the Caribbean in the movie. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we kind of got that in
We
that
got
movie.
it there, but I feel like for some reason they just thought, oh, we can get away with it here. We can do our PG-13. We can get Gore Verbinski. We can... This will work. But with Haunted Mansion, I don't know if they think it's like maybe adults won't see it, or because the ride is known as kind of having a goofy sense of humor. If I were to think of one person, but again, he would have the studio crushing him, and we've seen what happens when that happens with Sony. It would probably be Sam Raimi.
Ooh.
He would be somebody that I'm like, he's got a dark sense of humor.
Yeah,
He could do the goofy, but also like give it real creeps. But the thing is, I think Disney would just hold him back.
Yeah, it's like, could he go like that sort of Evil Dead route while restraining himself a little bit? Could he do that? That'd be interesting to see. That's a good point. I wouldn't even have thought of him.
He's about the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
Because if Guillermo del Toro did, it would have been great. But you get some Pan's Labyrinth shit going on there, and I'm like, that'd be awesome. I would watch that movie, but
yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have to do it like. I think this is my problem. If I were to put my dream version together, it wouldn't be what I did for FanScription. It would probably look like The Haunting of Hill House. Like, I would make it more psychological and stuff. Right. Or maybe, like, there were a lot of dark 80s Disney projects, like The Watcher in the Woods. There was some, like, Disney Channel stuff that I remember working when I was a kid.
Oh.
And there were a couple of old Disney movies that were, like, ghost story based that I can barely remember. They used to get run on the Disney Channel, but they had, like, a darkness to them, and they were not that goofy. No. I would probably do it like that, like kind of a retro vibe.
Okay. I think like an Are You Afraid of the Dark sort of tone, but pushed a little bit further to PG-13 could be a nice thing for something like The Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, that over Goosebumps. I feel like what we got was more Goosebumps.
Yeah, definitely more of the Goosebumps type movie. They did come out with that Are You Afraid of the Dark revival, this like 3-episode sort of miniseries, which wasn't bad. It was not bad. They definitely took it a lot farther than the Goosebumps movie did in terms of there's some goofy stuff in it, but it's more trying to scare kind of young teens and sort of what the original show was. So seeing that that tone adapted for maybe a Haunted Mansion movie,
like the old Twilight Zone.
Oh yes, absolutely.
like something like that, where it's just like, hey, we're gonna take this serious. If you want a little bit of comedy, sure, but like that kind of vibe to it. But I don't think Disney's interested. They're not.
It would. I think it would work well if they just got someone who would they kind of let them do something to a certain degree. I mean, like I said, you have to restrain them a little bit because they can't go hard R on this or something. But
I mean, it's something I think old school Tim Burton would have been great at.
Oh yeah.
Well,
not nowadays. Yeah, right. Not
like
nowadays.
The funny thing about and the ending I wrote is basically Beetlejuice.
Sure. Yeah, they're living with the ghosts.
But Beetlejuice is like got legit scares and creepy moments in it. It's dark comedy, but like I remember watching as a kid going like, whoa, and she like rips her face off, and the ending where they're all like decomposing, and like Beetlejuice is the big snake, like it. So I think old school Burton could have done it. Modern Burton, I think Modern Burton just says yes to anything, and then when the studio's like, do it like this, he's like, yes, sir. Like
wow.
it just.
Yes,
I don't know.
sir.
I don't know what happened to him, but
yeah, I didn't see Dumbo, so I don't know what his last movie was like. But I did like Big Eyes from a few years ago. Not bad.
Big Eyes is that's the only one recently that I thought was all right.
But that's when he wasn't going
the
too far.
The last great movie he did though was like Big Fish, I think.
Big Fish. I like Big Fish. Yeah,
Big Fish is like a great movie.
Ed Wood is still my number one favorite.
Oh yeah,
movie. That's for just me.
Ed Wood's probably his best.
Yeah, I agree.
That and Mars Attacks.
Just gonna go back into Mars Attacks. Anyway, we do have one question, which you kind of covered earlier, but just in case you want to go into anything deeper, this is from Catherine, how did you come up with having Jeremy Irons being the bad guy in the end? So this is mostly, like you said, just looking for someone who isn't busy around that time period, right?
I was just... I kept seeing this image from the ride footage of like this guy in a red top hat and red cape and like Skull just laughing maniacally like, nah! And I'm just like, I just thought Jeremy Irons. That was pretty much it. The laugh I was thinking of would have been like the Sleepy Hollow laugh from the old school Disney cartoon where he just said, yeah! But I'm like, who else could do a laugh like that and pull it off though? And I was like, there's something about Jeremy Irons where I'm like, Vincent Price would have been my first choice.
Right. I did kind of give him a little cameo in there.
Yeah.
In the video.
Oh, yeah. Christopher Lee, I think, could have done it, but I thought he might look a little too old at that point in time. And he was doing like Saruman, and I'm like, yeah, he looks really old. And I'm like, I want somebody who's still kind of intimidating. In a physical sense, I think Christopher Lee is very intimidating, but. Sure. At that stage in his life, he needs to have magic powers or something. That's why he worked as Saruman. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy, I wanted somebody that would seem like a robber baron. You know what I want? That Daniel Day-Lewis, There Will Be Blood type. That's the character I was going for.
Unhinged, kind of.
Yeah, just very unhinged, just ultimate power, money. I'm like, I can do whatever I want. I want to shove some guy down a well. I will do it. Like, just crazy person. And I wasn't getting that as much out of Christopher Lee. He's much too sophisticated. Like,
right.
But Jeremy Irons can like do that kind of like rich guy and also kind of crazy. Like, so
he could toe the line for sure. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be it for talking about the Haunted Mansion. Unless you got any more wisdom bombs you want to drop on us.
No. I hope Disney makes a good version of the movie.
I hope it happens. I really hope they really try and make something special and different with it. And make it creepy. I hope it happens eventually.
And I'll take a really legit creepy one that's super serious. I would also take one like the one I just wrote, which is like, it's like meant to be goofy. A number of people are like, well, this is still pretty goofy. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a Disney. Like, Disney does that well when they really want to execute. And I'm like, you can have fun and be goofy and tropey and like still have scares. So I'll take either one, but like just something executed well.
Right. Okay, well, next month, actually this month, in the month of November, we have another Disney movie coming out, and I think that I just had to try, and I think I got the idea of doing this one. So Frozen 2 is coming out on November 22nd, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to try and do a fanscription for Frozen. I think I got the idea. If you see another fanscription coming out, that means I couldn't make it work at the end of November. But
sorry.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I got an idea, and it's going to be more along the lines of the Lion King kind of alternate version of it instead of just changing one aspect of the story. So it's not going to be quite the rebuild that he did with this, but it's going to be sort of an alternate take on it. So look forward to that. I hope you'll like it. We'll see what happens. Yes, Let It Go will still be in there. We'll have Rob sing it.
Let it go.
Yeah, just let it go.
No, you do not want me singing.
Rob, you're going to sing it. Come on. We'll auto-tune you. It'll be fine.
No.
All right, whatever. We'll see.
Let it go, man.
Just keep going back to that. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next month. Remember, if you're listening to this, make sure you subscribe to the feed so you get these. And we also have the audio versions of every regular fanscription episode on the feed. So make sure you tune in for those. We'll be back next month with hopefully Frozen fanscription. If not, maybe something else. But just stay tuned. We'll talk to you guys later. I don't know. What do they say at the end of the Haunted Mansion? Make your final arrangements to return or something like that.
I forget.
Spooky.
There's always my way.